We're really pleased to have Christina from the University Counseling Center to present. She's one of our favorite presenters. I think we try at least once a semester to have you, and so I'll help manage the Zoom and the presentation, and we'll let Christina take it away. But one of the really cool things about this workshop is Christina actually talked to some of the student leaders in CTHS about kind of what they're feeling as transfer students, what they're experiencing right now. So it should be really tailored, and don't be shy. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so nice to see some faces that I recognize from prior workshops. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Please know I'm recognizing some faces. I really want to have workshops be a dialogue. So please, let's make this a conversation. As we go through today's presentation, I welcome your comments. Would love to hear your experiences and your thoughts about the material that we're going to cover. So today's presentation is all about this very tricky notion of work-life balance. So what we'll see here for today's presentation is really looking at three main objectives. So taking a look at identifying what are the factors that increase stress as we're trying to juggle multiple life roles, as all of you are. We're going to do some exploration of this work-life balance idea. And here's a little heads up, little preview. So the fact it's a process, y'all. It's a journey. It's not a destination. So there is no such thing as the perfect work-life balance. It's something that fluxes, waxes, and wanes as we go through life in different stages, be it as a student or once you reach a professional stage. That's absolutely still true. And then I want to offer some strategies for managing all of the stressors that you have in your life and how you might be able to address some of these balancing acts that we're going to talk about today. So, okay. So let's talk about general stressors. What are some of the things that you all are juggling? Love to hear from you. Put some up here on the screen, obviously. Are there things that you can really identify with what you see on this slide? Or are there other ones that you'd like to mention? Yes.
For me personally, not having enough time for my own hobbies or goals outside of work or school.
Yes, not having enough time. Work and school consumes all of it. Yeah, or at least the majority of it. Okay, beautiful. Yes. Other comments? Yes.
Like for me, it's like filling my schedule too full. Like I'm not good at time management whatsoever right now.
Also, maybe a little bit of see lots of head nods. Yeah, a lot of agreement. So some overcommitments perhaps, and the schedule being way too packed. Good. Yeah. Yes.
Burning candle both ends for like homework.
Burning the candle both ends. Yep, yep. Trying to manage all of those multiple roles while at the same time trying to meet the need that's there, the demands that are placed on you. Wonderful.
Oh, we have one in the chat. It says balancing parenting and studying and not taking on too much.
Yes, balancing family lives, your life as a student, the demands of a student. Absolutely. I think a lot of those are reflected on this slide, and I do very much want to acknowledge just the political climate that we're in these days, and what that might bring up. Perhaps for some of us more than others, but it is an added stressor. We certainly are seeing that significantly at the counseling center. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that today. Okay. So here's the deal, y'all. We have a finite amount of stress that we can hold. I often, with my clients in session, will use the image of a container. So if you think about your stress levels, we really have a finite amount that we can control. Or not even control, manage, I would say, relatively well. Some days, some moments better than others. There does come a point when this stress container, if there's been more and more and more put into it, it reaches a point where it overflows. And that overflow doesn't look pretty. It's pretty messy. What overflow looks like, as you can see the toxic green exploding there on the big container, is oftentimes when our nervous system is highly dysregulated. And what does that show up as? It can look like panic attacks. It can look like high levels of anxiety, angry outbursts, irritability, or it can also fluctuate to the other end of things, what we call hypoarousal, which is depression, numbness, even disassociation, spacing out. So on either end, it's not good, and it really is a finite amount that we can manage. So one of the things I like to bring about when we're talking about this from the very beginning is that idea of there is only a finite amount of stress that we can handle. And then we have to actively find ways to bring this down. How do we bring those levels down in our container? So we'll look at some more of that today. Okay, so an important part that is critical in managing these dual roles, work-life balance, and all the stressors involved with that, is examining and exploring our inner narrative. So what I mean by that is, what is the story you tell yourselves about you that we all do every day? And with that inner narrative, there can be at times some rigidity, some harshness, some real negative judgment, and that, of course, is going to increase the distress that we have in our container. Now, how that narrative is formed has a lot to do with your life history, your family, your childhood experiences, what you experienced in adolescence, young adulthood. All these things influence that narrative. But it's important to start to become aware of what that narrative is. What do you say to yourself about yourself as you go through life? So, for example, let's talk a little bit about expectations. In your role, as we're looking at balancing multiple roles, in your role as a student, anybody ever notice any rigidity in their expectations of what they want for themselves? Such as, I have to have a 4.0 all of the time. I'm seeing a lot of raising of hands, yeah. And with that rigidity of thinking, what often comes is what we call all or nothing thinking. So either it was perfect and I have the 4.0, or I'm a failure. That's what we call that all or nothing thinking. Having that level of expectation is really going to increase that distress level. Another thing can be with family or friends, expectation of I have to be there all of the time for my family or friends, and I have to show up 100% all of the time. Seeing some head nods too, yeah. Would anybody be willing in the room to share some of their own personal expectations in any of these roles that you carry? Be it as a daughter, as a mother, as a sister, a friend, partner. What do you think might be some of your inner narratives that reflect some of this rigidity? I can tell you that if you're willing to share, there's going to be somebody else in the room who has the same thing. You willing to share?
Yeah, I think that right now we're taking a lot of credits right now, and I still have like my research work I have to do, so like still trying to pay all the points at the time for them to do it.
So a lot is on your plate.
Yeah.
A lot is on your plate, okay. And when you have these expectations for yourself, how do you treat yourself if you don't meet that expectation?
I think I've been a lot kind of killing myself this semester compared to last semester, and so I've just been like trying to like at least like see them like once a month. They're like rotate it out with all
Nice. And how has that been for your stress level?
better.
Check it out, everybody. We already have one fabulous way of managing work-life balance. Thank you. Yes.
I also want to ask about that. I feel like I always find a lot of opportunities to get involved and do things, but you're never find opportunities for me to like relax, take breaks, and kind of be stressed, you know? So I have a hard time balancing that.
Okay, so again, beautifully insightful. I love coming to your group. It's like, oh, you people have these wonderful insights already. I love it. Yes. How many can identify with that comment? Absolutely. And it's hard. I mean, on the one hand, it's exciting to get involved with things, right? And that also makes for a rich university experience. But very insightfully, you're pointing out there can be an excess of that. Especially when you're taking care of yourself, it's lost in the mix. Beautiful. Yeah.
I think for me, it's kind of similar, but if I'm not being productive all the time or doing something on productivity or work, that I'm being lazy or not putting in all that I could.
It's judged negatively. Yeah. Again, people can relate to that. 100%. So you're picking up on truly what I think are cultural values that are prevalent in our mainstream culture, but I would suggest as well, highly prevalent in academia. And it's tricky business, right? Because we're often rewarded for being productive. Also, isn't there also a bit of a, what's the word, like being able to be proud of, like, I'm just so busy. I'm just like so busy all the time. Like that's somehow better than not being busy, you know, like somehow that's indicating like, well, not with you if you're not. So, good.
We have like 3 comments in the chat, so we'll go one by one. So the first one is having a 4.0, I want to keep it and trying to balance time studying with also time with my kids.
Yes, absolutely. Huge indication of that work-life balance.
Okay, second one, having such high expectations for my family because most of us are first generation students trying to help families.
Absolutely. And that sets the bar extra high too, right? Yeah.
And then the last one is, as a first generation student, I feel a lot of pressure to always have good grades. I want to learn to be less critical of myself.
Good, please know I support you in doing that, please, yes. But I want to recognize it's really hard when there's a lot riding on that expectation. Not just your own, but oftentimes family as well, especially as first gen. Okay, let's take a look at some other things here to help with this. At least to help with the understanding of it.
Next one.
Yes, please. All right, so when we're thinking about unhelpful thinking styles, we've started talking a little bit about this first one, the all or nothing thinking. Let's check the second one, mental filters. So how many in this room, when you get a grade that you didn't want, not the best that you had hoped for, let's say that's one thing that's relatively challenging or negative in your day, and then 5 other really great things happen to you, how many in the room focus only on that one thing that went wrong? Right, so that is what we call that mental filter, where we lose sight of what's going well. Now, interestingly, evolutionarily, our brain is actually designed to do that. It's a little bit more helpful back in our hunter-gatherer days to notice, you know what, a lion jumped out at me in that meadow. It's not better for me to pay attention to that than the birds are singing, and that's really funny. Because this will guarantee our survival if we pay attention to that. This, not necessarily. So there is an element to what our nervous system is geared to do, is to focus on things that are dangerous. Because now we no longer have, at least for most of us, lions in the grass. But when we have something that's threatening to our identity, boom, our attention goes there. This is the active work, though, of helping to lower that distress level and manage some balance in your life. I want to do a gentle challenge and an invitation to all of you. Notice even today, what are some good things that have happened to you today? In fact, there's a practice in therapy of a gratitude list. Something to do where every day you make note of what went well. You know, simple practice can really be, it doesn't have to be a grandiose thing. Like, one thing I'm trying to pay attention to, you might laugh, that's okay. But when I get green lights on my way to work, where is that? Like suddenly I'm like, I'm cruising, I'm there, another green light, you know? Because God knows that when it doesn't go well, and I'm still on the stoplight. It's really annoying, right? So I try to bring my attention to those things that are also going well. I want to really encourage you, pay attention to what you do well. I mentioned the green lights, that's not in control, but it's fun. But when you do things well, pay attention to it. I know a lot of us have been conditioned to say, well, that means I'm gonna be arrogant. I suggest there's a difference. When you're arrogant, you feel like you have to boast to get other people's approval. What we're talking here is about your inner narrative. When you can say to yourself, yeah, that was good. I did well. I managed that, and that was a good thing. It helps you reduce your stress. It helps you recognize that you have the strength that you need to face the challenges that you have right at this stage of your life. Okay, and then keep an eye out for the shoulds and musts. That goes oftentimes with that first one of all or nothing. I should get a 4.0 all of the time. I must turn everything in exactly when it's due. Life is messy, y'all, and as human beings, here's the deal, we are imperfect. That's the way we are. And part of being able to embrace a healthier lifestyle is moving with grace and addressing those imperfections. Okay. All right, so some of you might have seen this one before. It addresses perfectionism. I call it the cycle of misery. So here's how this works, and I'm very curious to hear what you all think about it. So with perfectionism, what ends up happening is a bar is set. That bar is usually set with that rigidity in mind, that all or nothing. And so when that bar is set, it's set at an unrealistic level. So what we do is in the beginning, at the start of the cycle, we give it our all. We're really excited, like we're totally gonna nail it. It's gonna be 100% all of the time for the entire semester. We put it all in there. And then what happens? Your humanity shows up and that imperfection comes in. So we fall short of the bar. And typically what happens in response to that is a feeling of feeling defeated, demoralized. In comes all the criticism, the negative judgment towards ourselves. And after a while, especially in the beginning, you're like, okay, I'm gonna regroup, I'm gonna try again, I'm gonna gear up, I'm gonna do it one more time. I'm gonna keep trying. And you keep falling short. Not because there's something wrong with you, once again, you're human, it's because that bar is not realistic. Again, perfectionism is about rigidity and unrealistic expectations. What I really want to caution you about is if you do this cycle too many times, it will lead to burnout. And so then all the time, energy you have put into this degree that you're working so hard to get can go down the drain. We don't want that to happen. So this is why taking a look at what is your narrative? What are you saying to yourself? How can we manage these life roles in realistic, self-compassionate ways that moves away from this cycle of misery? So let me pause and ask, how many perfectionists do we have in the room today? All right, so several, yeah. Is this cycle resonating with those? Yeah. How do you see yourself in this cycle? What might you recognize?
Just like starting the day, like let's say it's a new month, I want to meet my numbers at work, like highly motivated, energetic, give my all. Then maybe one month I do well and the other month I meet expectations, maybe I set my standards too high. And just like I tell myself I just humbled myself. I needed some humbling and then just restart and just go again.
Thank you for sharing. Yes. You know what's funny is when I'm talking about this with clients in individual therapy, with my perfectionists, I'll sometimes get the pushback of like, oh, Christina, so you just don't want me to have any values. Like, no, never said that. Notice the all or nothing thinking that we're engaging in right now, right? Like either the bar is so unrealistic and that's the only way to do it, or I'm gonna leave a depraved and immoral life. I think there's some room in between there. We could find a happy medium, right? So that's what I'm calling for. All right, y'all, so here is a model to think about as you're balancing the many demands of the multiple roles you carry, and to start examining carefully, mindfully, what are those things that are under your control? What might be things that sometimes might be under your control? And what are things that are outside of your control? I'd like to take a little quick minute right now for you to reflect on that. So list, you could either write it down or just make a mental note. What are some things that you can see for each of those circles? And again, things that are 100% under your control, things that are sometimes under your control, and things that are not under your control at all. So take just a quick minute to think about that. Hello, come on in, come on in. There's pizza over here.
And we have a sign-in sheet if you haven't signed it.
Think about that. Things you can control, what you can influence some of the time, and then what are things that are out of your control. Okay, so let's start off with the inner circle. What are some ideas? What have you all noted? Like, what could be some things that are under your control? Yeah.
I react.
What your reactions are. Beautifully stated, yes. So how you respond to a situation. Excellent, that's right. Other things in your control. Yeah.
Things you agree to do.
Oh, things you agree to do. There's a sense of agency there. You can choose, right? Love it. Okay, yeah. Virtual performance, yeah. And is there, tell me more about that. Like, are there times when you might not perform the way that you have told you to? But there's a lot you can do to prepare for, and that's in your control. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, you go through the process of applying, you put yourself out there, you fill out the paperwork, and absolutely under your control. Good, well, let's check out the next level then. So things that are sometimes under your control. What would you say? Sometimes are, sometimes aren't. Right area. Yes,
Maybe how people react to certain things you say or their actions towards you.
absolutely. I would put that in even more, even towards that out of your control. You really don't have any control over someone else, right? Absolutely. And it's a tricky thing, right? One middle gray area is for going off to the job example. So there's lots of things you can do to prepare for that. You can apply, you can study, you can research the job you're going to apply for, show up for the interview, all of those things. So you can influence the probability of getting hired, but you still can't force the outcome. And that's out of your control. Good. And then what would be things that are just out of your control? You know, that you can't influence. Talked already about in part one, other people's reactions. That's really critical. Yeah. Other things that come to mind.
Family emergency?
An emergency, absolutely, yeah. And that's obviously unexpected, and not something might have caused that, not under your control. How you react to it is something that you can. But anything else? Yes.
Like hunger, sleep, like natural body functions,
Yeah, yeah, right.
or like
That's-
getting tired.
Yeah. That's something, yes, our biological system is going to do. And how we respond to it, of course, is under our control. Nice, good example. Yeah,
I still got one in the chat, like weather, like
weather,
snowstorm.
absolutely, absolutely. How about executive orders from the White House? Is that under anyone's control in this room? Okay, let's move on to the next one then. So one of the things that I want to encourage you all to think about as you're balancing the demands of these many life roles, student, family member, partner, parent, what are the things that aren't under your control? And what are those things that you might need to let go of if they are outside of your control? This is a critical element to being able to have this healthy balance. Recognizing the difference between those things. Some of it, for example, on a student level, let's talk about that. You do your best with your work, you turn in your paper, you do the test, whatever it is. And then that's that point of letting go. Because you've done what was under your control. It influences, I would say, the outcome, but we don't control what the professor does or how they grade you, right? So that's that point of recognizing, right? This is a moment for me to start to let go. So I want to encourage you as you're thinking about what are the areas that are stressing you out in your life, and examine where do they fall on those circles? And for those that are under your control, that's where we find the best level of efficacy as well as improved mental health. When we can focus on those things that are under our control and let go of those that aren't. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So here's some examples, and some of these we've already talked about. With this inner narrative that we've been identifying today, here's where I want to really encourage you to recognize that in fact is under your control. Now, I want to really be the first to name this. That inner narrative, as I said earlier, is so influenced by your past history. And yet I wouldn't do what I do as a therapist if I felt hopeless about that being able to change. I am a big believer in it being able to change because I've seen it change. So it takes work, it takes effort, but can it be done? Absolutely. I want to encourage you to embrace your humanity, which means embracing imperfection. So with this, I would like to suggest self-compassion. So when you make a mistake, as you will, welcome to our human experience. What is a self-compassionate way of approaching a mistake or when you fall short of your expectations? What could be some messaging? What would that narrative look like? Any ideas? Yes.
Reminding yourself of your humanity and not letting the mistake be like, oh, well, this is representative of who I am. That's not the.
Beautiful. So you're looking more at your behavior rather than your value as a human being. Love that. Absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yes.
think seeking conflict resolution, just so it's not eating you up, and like, even though it's technically not self-compassion, it's like, it is compassion, and eventually it will be self-compassion, so like, let that go.
I love that. Yes, yes, yes. And by conflict resolution, do you mean that like with another person, if there was that?
Yeah, like, specifically make a mistake with another person.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. So repairing if there's been a rupture. That's, I know, mental health jargon, but making that repair work, so healing what has happened. Beautiful. I think a big part of that is taking accountability for our actions. And if a sincere apology is necessary, that can go a long way to healing.
We have one in the chat. It says, giving myself words of encouragement the same way I would tell a close friend or relative.
Beautiful. Great suggestion. Ever notice that? How you would treat another person? Very different. How you talk to yourself. Yeah. So let's encourage that. Think about that. When you notice the tirade or the tyrant, an inner tyrant coming in and really nailing you down for something, a mistake you might have made or things didn't go as well as you had hoped, put in mind, what would this say to me right now? And look at how you might apply that to yourself. Good. Other things that I want to really point out. I like to emphasize the news and social media. So our brain is going to be responding. I know that oftentimes we turn to social media to relax and the scrolling that can happen. I want to really encourage you to be mindful of what is the information that's coming in. That can be and has been found to be not only addictive, but also mentally distressing. Just the other day, I heard a report done on a study of people, it's like 500 people who went off of social media for 2 weeks. And it was not that long a period of time, right? They still had access, like they would still work on their computers when they were at work or whatever they needed to do. But in their free time, they let it all go. They didn't have any social media. And they found that they started engaging more with other people. They were outside more. Not surprisingly, their stress levels went down. So take a look at that. How much social media are you consuming? And when it's that mindless scrolling, pay attention to what impact that has. That can fill up that stress container even more than you might imagine. So really want to invite you to take a look at that. All things here that are under your control. And what happens on the macro level, so on that national level, sure, there might be some things that we could express a voice in, and then there's others that will be outside of our control. So I invite you all to think about that inner circle. Any comments or questions about this? All right. So looking at work-life balance, we're really addressing it as a fluid state. As some days are going to be better than others. It is a verb, it's active, and it is not a destination. It's something that we actually have to keep working at. So it's fluid. Now, having said that, I do want to say that there's some choices we can make that can improve that. And here's where we want to talk a little bit about time management and boundaries. So let's take a look at the next slide there. So some of these things have been mentioned already, but the importance of saying no and setting that boundary. So how many people here have struggled with being able to say no when the requests come in? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what would you say are some of your reasons for that? Like what speaks to you about being able to say yes? Let's acknowledge that. Yeah.
Money.
Money, absolutely. So to be able to earn money, you need to pay your bills. Fair, absolutely. I saw a hand back there, yeah.
People pleasing.
People pleasing behaviors, yes, yes. We all want to be liked. You know, we want to be esteemed, we want to be well regarded. So if somebody says, hey, do you want to be the president of this next club? Or how about leading this committee? Or how about this project? Sure, of course, I can do it. Yeah. Any other reasons why we say yes?
Mostly, well, for me, mostly because I don't know how to say no in a way where I feel like it doesn't sound right. So, yeah.
So what do we, beautiful, and people can relate to this? Right? Yes. So let's talk about that. What do we associate with saying no? Like, what do we think the other person is gonna think when we say no? Like, let's flesh that out, yeah.
I think they're gonna think like that I don't care about like whatever it is,
Yeah,
I do care, I just can't do it.
beautiful, yeah, so lack of caring. Did you have your, when you say
I
no?
say anything she said, but I'm just gonna add to it, just not being loyal.
Loyalty,
Yeah, but-
okay, loyalty is a factor, okay?
Like maybe in this case, no, but I'm afraid that they're not gonna come back and ask me again, depending on the situation.
So they're like,
Right, yeah, so it could be like, I don't wanna miss that opportunity and then close the door forever. Yeah,
I have some in the chat. So
Okay.
this one, not wanting my husband to look like a fool when he signs me up for something.
look at the loyalty thing, and I appreciate the looking out for.
And then something I don't want to do or don't have time to do.
Okay. So here's the deal, y'all, and I have it up here on the slide. We have a finite amount of time and energy. That's the news for the day. We only have finite amount of time and energy. And that pie can truly only be divided up in so many ways. And when we divide it up too much and there's nothing left to take care of yourself, we go back to that burnout mode. So, that overcommitment leads to that burnout. And it really decreases a sense of efficacy and effectiveness in your work. And actually in how you show up in any of the roles. So let's see if we could reframe, let's rewrite the story about saying no. What would you all say are some healthy ways that we could look at that collectively? There's a lot of wisdom in the group. What could be some healthier ways for your internal narrative when you have to say no? Yes.
I would say like, I'm not capable of doing that, like I don't have the capacity for me to do that, but I do know, like, connect them to someone else or to another resource, so still be as helpful as you can at that moment with what you have.
Beautiful, and to me, that's also communicating care for that other person. That's like, I'm so sorry, I can't, but let me help you reach somebody else who might. Beautiful, great idea. There's another hand back there.
I would just say how nice, I was like, I'm just not interested in this, honestly, you're not sure, I'll be on. I'm just like that's just who I am, honestly.
I
would just say,
love that, right? Because in the end, if you think about the person asking, like if I was asking and somebody said yes, but they didn't really want to, is that gonna be good? Right? I don't think so. Yeah, so I appreciate that honesty. If I may ask, how has that gone over for you when you've been upfront like that?
I feel like I was in a relationship, like already establishing some sort of like boundaries, so it's gone pretty good. It's like, I was on the phone with my friend today and I was like, I just have to have enough time to have this conversation right now, like kind of need to get to. She's like, oh yeah, I'll get your time, so. It goes good for me, but I honestly understand that a lot of people aren't like that chill and like understand that like. Sometimes boundaries can be tricky, but as long as you establish that and have that open communication, I think it's really works. So.
Agreed. And in that situation, it sounds like your friend, of course, knows you, knows that you care about her, and so, yeah.
Absolutely.
I have one in the chat that's similar. It says, practicing straight talk. I'm currently taking a class that teaches the importance of this rather than tiptoeing a situation.
Love that. Yes, absolutely. Yes, for straight talk. Yeah. And I think there's ways in which we can communicate a no without, while we're still communicating care. Let's put it that way, right? So we can say, we've got that clear communication, but it can be still phrased with, I do care about this issue, or I care about you. I just gotta go right now, but would love to connect later, or thank you. I really appreciate, I feel honored that you'd asked me to do this project, or be president of this next club. And I'm so sorry, I've got this pie that apparently is already well divided up, and I've got little pieces to get. So I think there's ways in which we can communicate to others, like it's truly not you, it's that my time is finite. And I would love to do this perhaps at some other time. How does that sound? Yeah? Say that again.
I just like your time is valuable, honestly, especially nowadays, we're like constantly so busy with things and shit, as with other students. So it's like, I don't want people to waste my time, if you have a video instead or something, like, only during that,
Love that, yeah. So I wanna invite you all, the gentle challenge here, invite you all, start saying no. And be intentional about your yeses. So really think about when you say yes to something, have it count. Because just as what was just said, your time and your energy is valuable, and it also is finite. It is not infinite. So say yes intentionally and consider what you value when you say yes. Is this something that's value congruent? So for example, if you have a family member who wants to spend time with you and you have a finite amount of time, make that a quality time. It might mean setting some boundaries around it. It might mean I can't spend the entire weekend with you, but what if we did something, an activity together for this period of time? And be present when you do that activity. You and that person will feel so much better after that sincere connection. Versus if you say yes to something and you're constantly looking at the clock, and you're like, oh, okay, right? So be intentional with your yeses.
And we have a similar comment in the chat about kind of making it clear that if I do something extra, that I can't do something else.
Beautiful, absolutely, such a good point. Okay. All right, so here's another interesting research that's been done about managing work-life roles. This was research that was done a while ago, but has actually continued to be found to be valid and effective. And it's looking at 3 different types of roles and role definition. So there's type 1, type 2, and type 3. We'll go through each one and want to get a sense of which ones do you identify with. Okay, we're going to start off with role number 3. So this is the super person syndrome. So this is, I can do all the things all the time and be everything for everybody. So this is meeting all the expectations that others have of you without any question. No real strategy for dealing with role conflict and multitasking to the extreme. Okay, all right, let's try type number 2. The type 2 starts to change things a little bit. So with type 2, this is a personal role redefinition. So you internally are working on changing that narrative by looking at what are your standards. What might be some ways to start to flex that? What could be ways to start saying no, thinking about what responsibilities that you hold, what you want to say yes to. Changing the standards could be like, well, how clean does my house really have to be to get through the next week? How much laundry do I really have to do? But you're looking at yourself. So that's type 2, okay? So looking at that internal. And then we go to type 1, which is structural role definition. So here, we're starting to advocate with others in our environment and people that we interact with. So we're starting to negotiate with partners and family members about household tasks. Here, we're starting to look about interacting with your boss, letting them know, hey, I've got a big exam coming up on Friday, I might need to flex some time. Really starting to advocate for yourself and what your needs are in relationship to the environment. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, which one do you think you all are? Where are you at? So remember, we've got that type 3 is the superhero syndrome, right? That I can do all the things all the time for everybody. Type 2 is you're starting to work on that balancing of changing that inner narrative. And type 1 is you're advocating for yourself with those that you interact with. So how many identify with type 3? Yeah, so a little bit, okay, yeah. Type 2, okay, nice. And type 1. Our friend with clear communication and boundaries, I love it. All right, if we could go to the next slide there.
Oh, and then online people both said that they're moving to 2 from 3.
I love it. Actually, let's keep this up for just a minute if I could. Yeah. So here's what the research tells us, and I'm sure it's not terribly surprising. So type 3 is the least amount of well-being. So we need to do some work for those of you who worked and identified with 3. Highest level of burnout. Some things that I need to change there. Type 2, we've got middle levels. So, improvement for sure, but still some challenges. And then type 1 is that overall best level. And I would suggest, of course, that type 1 incorporates type 2 as well. And so it's not like one or the other, but it's incorporating, changing that inner narrative while also working with your environment. This means advocating for ourselves. This means speaking up for what we need. And for, again, a lot of us, we might have gotten the message growing up that that wasn't okay to do, or that that was considered selfish. You have a right to advocate for yourself. You have a right to have your needs met as much as possible. Might not mean that it's always met, but you do have a right to have a voice to mention that. So, any questions or comments about this research? Kind of interesting. Thank you. All right. So let's start talking about some takeaways. So we talked a lot about that inner narrative and looking at those personal expectations. We're really trying to challenge rigidity with realistic expectation. Want to really invite that idea of self-compassion. With self-compassion, what that means is we are going to embrace our humanity. And so when we make a mistake, it doesn't mean that we are a horrible human being. Instead, we could say, you know what? Yeah, that is disappointing. And that is frustrating that I didn't get what I wanted. But what can I learn from this? Not that I'm a failure, but what do I want to take from this experience? What might I want to do different next time? Choosing your yeses carefully, saying some no's. Take time for self-care. And self-care can look like a lot of different ways. I think self-care is now become a bit of a buzzword in mainstream culture. And it doesn't always mean a bubble bath with a candle. I think that's great. If you want to do that, that's wonderful. But it can look like boring self-care as well. Meaning you do the grocery shopping so that you have food to eat during the week. Maybe you do some meal prep. Maybe you do some meal planning. Maybe you get enough rest. Give yourself permission to actually rest and sleep. I've said this to I think some in the audience here before, but when I was in grad school, ironically, I thought self-care was like, oh, that's such a quaint idea. I'll do that when I'm on break. Yeah, that went really well. So, yeah, I ended up getting bronchitis, and then I ended up with pneumonia. And what was interesting and the takeaway for me about that experience was, well, apparently it is finite, this time and energy business. And if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to meet the goals that I'm working so hard to get. So sleep is not a luxury, y'all. It is a priority. It has to happen. You need to feed yourselves. I can't tell you how many times when I talk to my clients, I'm like, so when was the last time you ate? I'm like, well, I was sleeping 4 games yesterday, last night around 8. So let's talk about self-care, not as a nice idea, but as a reality. Something that I would encourage you to prioritize. And think about how you can negotiate with others around you. How can you advocate for yourself? Think about what your own needs are. So on this point, I just would like to check in. Are there any changes that you are thinking you might want to do as we've been looking at this material? Are there things that you think you could start to implement for yourself? Any ideas about that?
For me, it's actually therapy, because I've been postponing it for such a long time, because like I don't have the time or excuses of piling on top of it. And so I finally decided to take the step. So it was a bit difficult, but I think it's really gonna be helpful for me for the rest of my journey.
Yay! Fabulous! I applaud that. I'm a believer, let me see, but so glad that you decided to do that. That's a well-worded kind of investment. Good, good. Other ideas, yeah.
One thing, actually, it's funny, I was talking to one of my friends this morning about this, is that we've been missing each other throughout the week, just with crazy stuff, and so we actually were like, okay, we're gonna plan to do a journal at this time, on this day, and just grab coffee, journal, and maybe notes of this, and then we'll like talk about it, and that's like a good quality time with her.
Yes.
But also self-care.
Yes, that's true.
Holding each other accountable.
And holding each other accountable, doing it with a buddy is so helpful. And how therapeutic. Yes, this makes me incredibly therapeutic. Love that. Good,
We
good.
have some comments in the chat,
Please.
and we also have 5 minutes,
Yeah.
but sorry, more sleep for sure was one, and then more advocacy for my needs with my family and their needs as well, and then I'm gonna add in exercise for myself.
Bravo, bravo. Love to hear that. Excellent, excellent. Okay. In the slides that come in, Paul, I'm sure you'll send this out,
Yes.
right? There are some other suggestions. Let's go check to the next slide. A lot of these are gonna be, what we've been talking about right now. So just wanna keep this in mind in making that conscientious, intentional choice of how you spend your time. So that you can then really enjoy the yeses when you say yes and stay firm in the no's. Really want to encourage staying firm in the no's for your own well-being. Okay, I think in the last couple of slides, we have a stress resilience plan. So here's some good strategies to think about how to prioritize and how to manage the multiple demands of both. So again, Paul will send this out, we might have some good information for you to check out. But as we get ready to wrap up, I just wanted to open it up to any other questions, comments, things that you think that you might want to take and implement in your life. Yes.
We learned was, exercise and sleep were really closely connected.
Yes.
Because, I had my, watch, before the Garmin watch, that was telling me, oh, you didn't exercise much this day, you're going to have a worse sleep.
Yep, it's so true. And exercise is one of those things that can certainly improve sleep. And it can also give us energy to be able to focus on school stuff and carrying the responsibilities of all the roles that you have. So, and exercise doesn't have to mean going to the gym. I actually also get a lot of that from clients, like, I don't have time to go to the gym. You don't have to go to the gym to do exercise. Weather seems to slightly be changing. Even a walk outside, a brisk walk, walking around campus, that in and of itself, movement of some kind. Look at what you enjoy doing, what feels good in your body, and give yourself time to do those things. Good. Any other takeaways you want to mention or things that you want to take to implement in your life before we wrap up today? Were you going to say something?
Sorry, these were really disgusting. I would say mindfulness, telling it's like, it's just like doing what feels good to you in the moment. Like obviously like you have like your life goals, you don't want to just completely like disregard. But like for me, like I will live in class in like 3 days. And I just don't feel like, oh, right, but here I am going to work, doing my course, so doing all these other things. So it's like, don't worry about like, there's so much pressure nowadays in this world, especially out of college and young people, until like, you're on top of your stuff, but it's like, you could just not go to class one day, like it's fine, it's not the end of the world. So I think just having that mindset that like, everything's a journey, and you take small steps to get to great life.
I love that. And to me, what you said too speaks to flexibility, which I absolutely love. That's part of getting away from that rigidity of thinking that we identified as toxic and negative. Okay. All right, you all. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And please know that we have our counseling services that are available to help you out with mental health stuff. I did bring some brochures. You're welcome to check out our website. All of our services are free of charge. And in addition to individual therapy, we also have what are called skill sessions. And skill sessions are designed specifically to help with things like time management, dealing with procrastination, task prioritization, these things that can sometimes really build up and negatively affect mental health. We can do a skill session with you to give you some concrete tools for management. All right, y'all, best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you.